All right, fact check this podcast, and tonight I am joined by my good friend JForte, and we are going to talk about the heroes who weren't supposed to be, and maybe even the villains who were right. Jay, how you been? How's life been treating you?
Not too bad. I feel better than yesterday, man. I had like a 24-hour bug, so that was rough.
There's a little part of me
out.
Yeah, there's a little part of me that's kind of that was a little bit glad that you canceled yesterday, or asked if we could push to today, because I feel a lot better today than I did yesterday. I've been fighting a head cold for the past week or so, and but also interestingly enough, on this topic, my wife and I were watching the Mr. McMahon series on Netflix. And that was a wild trip down memory lane.
I still need to check that out. Magoo recommended it to me, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll get to it. I just haven't got around to watching it yet." I can only imagine, especially just like some of the inside baseball I know from all the years to like what's come out recently.
Well, and so it looks at like the WWF in the late 80s and the early 90s, whenever Vince McMahon comes onto the scene and takes over and stuff. And then you get the Nitro versus Raw wars for there through the 90s and stuff. And oh man, it was really interesting. And so as we're watching it, I'm really getting into it. My wife is looking at me. She's like, "What do you know about all this?" I was like, "Shit, what are you talking about?" I used to go up to my grandmother's house and sit there with my uncle, and we'd have Raw on one television, Nitro on the other TV, watching both of them at the same time, and then go to school on Tuesday and talk about it with all my buddies and stuff.
Yeah, dude, what country boy didn't enjoy some wrestling? Yeah, wrestling was that was the thing, man.
Heck,
remember they used to show it on Saturday morning sometimes, Saturday nights. The region I grew up in, we would get some Jim Crockett or some Smoky Mountain Wrestling. To watch some of that smaller stuff.
So it shows ECW at one point through the series where they're talking about Stone Cold coming up and stuff, and I was like, man, I remember some ECW stuff too. We would watch some ECW or some local type wrestling that would be going on. Jerry the King Lawler was from somewhere nearby.
He was a Memphis guy, or at least that's what he got big in, was the Memphis promotions.
Yes. So Memphis is where he really started to hit big, but he was from further north, around South Fulton, Martin, Tennessee area, which is right, it's home. So every once in a while he would still show up and do promotionals with the local wrestling stuff that would be going on. My uncle, it was so funny. So we'd go up to my grandmother's and I'd watch it with my uncle. But the lady who lived down at the end of the road, her and my uncle would be on the phone the whole time. She's down at her house watching it while he's there at my grandmother's house watching it. And the whole time they're on the phone just "Oh my gosh, did you see that? Oh my gosh." It was hilarious. But they would go to local shows and stuff, and Jerry the King Lawler would come and do promotionals and stuff and guest spots at some of those local shows. So it was pretty cool. But I mean, a lot of that is heroes and villains, and it's all the storytelling. It's all the drama and the theater, and but it's really interesting watching Mr. McMahon, where you see some of the aspects of it that, so as a little kid, it's you think that it's all real, and then as you get a little bit older, you find out that it's not. And now, as an adult looking watching the series about it, you find out that some of it was actually very real. It was the storylines and real life kind of bled together, and it's really cool. Yeah, I do recommend that you check it out as well.
There's a ton of those stories. who was it? Arn Anderson. There's like this famous story of him, like he loved to pull guns on people. Those old Anderson boys, those old Four Horsemen guys. I think Arn Anderson might have been the guy that stabbed Sid Vicious in the leg with like scissors or something at a hotel after a show when they were all drinking. And they might have been like partying up in a room, and like Sid Vicious and Stone Cold. This is before he was Stone Cold. I think he was still stunning Steve Austin at this time in the WCW. So Big Van Vader was down there, and he basically had to like take his like fingers and stick it in the artery in Sid's leg to stop the bleeding, and basically saved his life that night.
A lot of crazy stuff with all of that. But that also kind of bleeds over to what we're going to talk about, because we're talking about fictional characters who a lot of times get portrayed or viewed, at least by the audience, us, as good guys or as heroic type figures. But then their creators, or in some cases, not necessarily their creators, but like mainstream media, don't want you to view them that way. And so their legacy as a character kind of gets called into question.
Especially with like a lot of like newer material, like retconning it, trying to like make the characters awful in modern times.
Well, okay. So like you had the example of Rorschach, who Alan Moore did not consider Rorschach's character to be a hero. He wanted it to be a gritty, real life type of portrayal of like a Batman, to take away that heroic stigma. Like, this dude like viciously punishes people as a vigilante. Like, you're not supposed to view him as a bad guy, and that's why like Moore makes him a,
Moore's a commie. That's always been his kind of like look out. I mean, for lack of like going into details, socialism, all this other stuff, but he's like a really lefty guy. And I just always found it kind of funny that like Rorschach's always doing like the righteous and just thing. It's like, who's he killing? He's killing pedophiles, rapists. He doesn't compromise. And yet we're supposed to identify with Ozymandias, this big like ubermensch of a guy who's like, we're going to kill just a few people to save many, for the greater good. I was like, okay, it tells me a lot about how your perspective is on justice and morality. I mean, That's just a simple comparison between those two characters in that story. That story is really good, by the way.
Oh yeah. And like, for anybody who hasn't, like, you should definitely read the Watchmen comic books, the graphic novel. Like, check it out. There's also other,
and then watch the director's cut of the movie.
Yes, and there's a new animated series that's come out that's based on the comic, that's supposed to stick to the comic more so than what the movie was excellent, but it deviates from the comics in some ways. So there's a comic book or a animated series that sticks more directly in line with the comics. And then like, did you watch the HBO Max Watchmen series that came out?
I skimmed it. It was I didn't like it.
It was fine. I mean, it picks up the story from the comics like on several years later. So you've got Ozymandias has been I guess his punishment for what he did, for those who knew what he did, is he was banished to the moon, and then you've got like stuff happening on Earth, and I
like how
I didn't dislike it. Like, I thought it was good. I didn't feel like, I felt like there was some like DEI messaging type stuff that gets blended into it. But when if you just watch it like in a vacuum, and you just watch like one episode and you get the DEI stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, this is woke, stupid shit. It's like, yeah, I can see that. But if you watch the entire series and the way that it's all like part of the story and the narrative and the world there, why they have the masked heroes in this town the way they do and everything else, like once you get the whole story, then it sits a lot better. But yeah, I mean, I can understand why some people would maybe
I don't know.
Might be watching an episode, see it, and be like, "Yeah, fuck this shit."
Well, the whole on the nose thing of like I know the people that are like I said how like they'll try to retcon like things or try to be like, oh well, this isn't acceptable anymore. Like the whole like white nationalist movement with like the Rorschach character and I don't know, the whole the DEI shit where of course Dr. Manhattan has to take the form of a black man but then give his balls to a female. I mean, that's the way I saw that metaphor, but I could be overthinking it.
But then again, with the Rorschach white nationalists, it's hard to view them as the bad guys. Like they are the things that they're doing and the reason that they're doing them. They have the right end game in mind. They're trying to solve the problem that that Dr. Manhattan creates in the original. Like they know what the problem is. They're trying to create the solution to the problem. So it's hard to really view them as bad guys for like me watching it. I'm like, oh, like, yeah, I mean, maybe I'm a little bit of a white nationalist, but also like they're right here.
I don't feel like our morality is as warped as like some of these like far left types, you know, like they view like someone like Rorschach as the bad guy because, hey man, the guy's just got like a sexual orientation for like little kids. Why do you have to go chop him up into bits? It's like, he raped the kid.
Right. Well, and it's like, so another one of those characters that is often viewed as a hero and the creator did not necessarily intend him that way is V from V for Vendetta, which is another Alan Moore creation. And like he's supposed to be viewed as like this extremist. Like you're not supposed to, like, yeah, the government's corrupt, but he's like the extreme answer to it. And like that's not the way that you're supposed to do that. Like, yeah, but the reason people view that as a heroic character, like if you as the creator can't understand why people view a Rorschach or a V as the heroic figure in this story, like maybe you've disconnected from the reality that we actually live in. Like if you can create these characters that live in this corrupt, like the reason that Rorschach and the Watchmen exist is because the police couldn't get the job done. So they are getting the job done of policing their society. The reason that V exists is because the government has become so corrupt through all of its actions to heal and get through a crisis situation that they have become the bad guy. And you need not a hero, but an anti-hero that's willing to get their hands dirty to fix the problems that have been created by this thing. And we can sit and view our own world and be like, okay, look, that's like exactly what we're fucking living through right now. Look at our police refusing to actually go and punish crime. Look at the response to everything that happened in 2020 and 2021. Look at how our government became this Leviathan that just put its thumb on everything. Like, yeah, these are the kind of figures that we kind of need now. And so they're viewed as heroes, and the creators, I don't know, they lose their pulse of the audience at some point.
There was I don't know if you've ever read the Kingdom Come story. It was a 90s graphic novel. It was written by what's his name? He wrote some of my favorite Wally West runs, but he's kind of like got TDS and he's nuts now, but he wrote it. And the guy that does the realistic painting, I can't think of his name right off the top of my head, that type of artwork. So it's basically like set in the future, superheroes, they kind of fall out of vogue because everything's like it was more of a critique on the extremity of the 90s with like a lot of the culture and everything, but like all the superheroes kind of like just go out and just are kind of like making enemies of like the people, kind of like, in Watchmen, like of civilians. But then like of all the cities, Gotham is the one city that has order. And that's because Batman at that point had built basically his own Iron Man army, like Ultron, of bat robots that police the city. And because the Gotham PD couldn't do shit, so it's like, all right, I got this. So anyway, I know that was a random tangent, but that just kind of reminded me of that scenario.
Well, it kind of gets to, there are a lot of authors and creators who have tried to make Batman seem more of a not a hero. Like they don't want him to be viewed as a hero, like vigilantism, taking measures into your own hands. Like that's not supposed to be a thing that you should aspire to. But then they wonder why people make these characters out to be heroes. It's because we actually see what's going, like the authors, the creators, they live in this utopian like world where nobody would need a gun because the police have guns. So like you would never need a gun because the police will take care of you. They have guns. It's like, yeah, but we all live in the real fucking world where the police don't respond at all, and if they do, they're too late by the time they do. So like you need people that are actually going to be able to respond in real time to the things that are going on. Like it's this disconnect from reality.
Even in their own utopian minds, like when they try, these same types of creators try to write Superman, they can't fucking do it because Superman's going to do the morally right thing. He's the big blue Boy Scout for a reason. But they always end up trying to turn him into like a villain or deconstruct him or whatever. It's like, dude, he's got all this power and he just wants to do the right thing. That's the way he was raised. But yeah, they can't ever, write somebody that's like objectively black and white when it comes to good and evil.
Well, and then you get like Paul Atreides from Dune. So, what's the Dennis Villeneuve and Frank Herbert didn't like the way that Paul was portrayed in the David Lynch.
With Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah. They thought he was given too much of like a hero's treatment and portrayed too warmly and too kindly. So what they tried to do was make him more edgy and make him a little more aggressive or angry, I guess. Like they're trying to. So what Herbert had said about Paul is, in the books, Paul was intended to be a warning against messianic figures. Paul is not supposed to be viewed as the hero that rises up and destroys a corrupt empire, which is what most people view him as. He is the hero of this story because the empire is corrupt, the emperor is corrupt, the Harkonnens are corrupt. They kill his family. Like,
yeah, they're into bed together. They set him up.
They do all of this terrible shit, and then Paul gets his revenge. He rises up, he rallies the people behind him, and then he basically just kicks the shit out of the empire and wages his like galactic war to put an end to it. That it's hard for anybody who's like a normal human being with a functional fucking brain, like not the bug people, like we're the ones who don't side with the bugs in Starship Troopers, the ones who are like, yeah, go squash the fucking bugs. It's hard for us to view that story and say, okay, so like, yeah, Paul really shouldn't have done that. Like, it was terrible that the Empire like completely murdered his entire family, but or tried to anyway. But he shouldn't have he shouldn't have waged a galactic war on them. It's like, nah, fuck that. Oddly enough, my kids and I've talked about the movie before, and I don't know if you've seen it or not. But anytime, like, there'll be, if something happened to one of your kids, like, what would you do to the person that did it? And my answer is always, have you ever seen The Secret in Their Eyes? And when you ever seen?
I have not seen it.
Okay, so spoiler alert. In the early part of the movie, you have these two detectives that are working together on watching a mosque for a terrorist type thing, and a body turns up in the dumpster at the mosque. So they go to check it out, and it's the daughter of one of the detectives. So the story is set 13 years later, where everybody's kind of moved on. Like, they found the guy who did it, but because they were watching him for some terrorist stuff, the DA at the time wouldn't let them go after him. A lot of bullshit. A lot of politics and other craziness. Anyway, so you're going back and forth between 13 years later and when they're trying to catch this guy. Well, so the guy like disappears at some point. The one that they knew did it. And so now you've got 13 years later, they're like, the partner is like, I found him. Like, I found him. He's been in jail. He's out. We're going to go get him. Reopen the case. Like, we're going to nail him to the wall for what he did. And then what you end up finding out is that this isn't him. The detective whose daughter got killed, she actually found him a few months after he did it and has been holding him hostage and torturing him for the last 13 years. Awesome twist there at the end. So anyway, that's what I would do if anybody ever saying to my kids, like, you're going to be hung up, or, you're going to be chained up in a barn for the rest of your going to be very unnatural life.
It's hard to find a body when you're chained to a radiator.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, me and my wife always joked, like, realistically, like, if I was to become a superhero or her in real life, we would be more of the Frank Castle types. Especially if it came to the family.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the devil, that's another one where the creator hates his work now. Like Jerry Conway, like, he hates that, like, people love that symbol of, I mean, it's a fucking skull. It's a cool symbol.
Right. It's a badass symbol. And to that, they've tried to retcon Punisher. So they did all of this retelling for Frank Castle before they killed the character off. Then they brought in then they started like a new Punisher series. It lasted all of 4 issues because it was so terrible. People rejected it so hard that they're like, okay, well, it's time to just go ahead and abort this horrible thing. And like, they ended it after only 4 episodes or 4 issues. And
I've checked out about a lot of the modern stuff, but there was a recent run where, like, they changed his symbol so it wasn't the cool skull, and they didn't have him use guns, and they had him leading the hand. The evil ninjas that Wolverine and Daredevil fight. Now we're supposed to like him. He's a good guy.
I think that was the one that only made it 4 issues before they probably just like dipped out on it. Like, yeah, you changed everything about the character that made people love the character. Like, how do you have such a, like, again, it's the reason that Frank Castle and the Punisher is viewed as a hero is because there is something corrupt and broken with the system that resulted in his family getting killed, and now he is going for retribution. Like, he is doing the things that the people who are supposed to be protecting us don't do. And you're supposed to, by the assertion of the creators, you're supposed to view this as like, this is a bad thing. You're not supposed to do this. You're supposed to let the justice system work the way it's supposed to work. Okay, well, the way that it's supposed to work versus the way that it actually works are two very different things. And the way it actually works is it fucking doesn't. So those of us who live in the real world see that and we're like, okay, it doesn't fucking work. This dude is taking things into his own hands. It's like, that's fucking heroic. That's what you have to do, especially if you care about your family, if you care about the people around you. Like, you take care of business.
Oh, no, this is just a cautionary tale. You're not supposed to relate.
Well, that goes back to Paul. Like,
yeah,
he wages this like massive war across the galaxy, and like 60 billion people die, and blah blah blah, all this stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, that's all like really terrible. He also ends up bringing down the entire empire that created this whole situation to begin with, where people were being really terribly treated. Now, Paul does not have the solutions to any of that. He's just the fist that destroys the thing, and then his son Leto becomes the one that actually like brings order and peace and stuff like that. But like, every story has to have that hammer, that thing that identifies the problem and destroys it. It's like Julius Caesar and then Augustus afterwards. Like, Julius was not necessarily a great ruler, but he saw the problem, marched on it, and put a boot in it. And then, then he gets assassinated. But that gives way to his nephew Augustus, who becomes possibly the greatest Caesar.
One of the greatest, yeah.
Right. So it's, that's like the story of history. You see those stories throughout all of history. Hell, the people who demonize or who don't want you to view Rorschach and Paul and Punisher as heroes would probably say the same thing about our founding fathers.
Yeah.
If you just look at the stories throughout history, like it is rising to power through violent measures. I wrote that Substack about Starship Troopers and the negative the negative view of Heinlein by the literary world, like the academic types. They really don't like Heinlein because they say he was a fascist and all this stuff, because he in Starship Troopers and some of his other writings, like the ultimate authority comes from your ability to wield power, and the ability to wield power is at the point of a gun, at the exercise of violence. And it's like,
what's the old saying about like ruling by fear or being loved or whatever? Someone had a good quote. I can't remember. I'm butchering it. It's along the lines of like, you want to be loved and feared at the same time, but it was I don't know. I'm probably screwing it up. We'll just say it was Machiavelli. There we go. That sounds academic.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, no, I can't even think of where I remember that from, dude. Like, all these concussions, man. It's so hard to recall stuff sometimes. But then we'll just be sitting around and someone will be like, apricot. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this Machiavelli quote now. Just you have those weird triggers with your memory.
If rule by fear means bending people to one's will, then rule by love means lifting others up. That's terrible.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right.
That doesn't sound right at all. Fuck you, Microsoft Bing search. I don't want something happy and pleasant. I always tell my kids, anybody that says violence is not the answer isn't asking the right question. Like violence is always the answer. You just have to get around to it. Like every conflict is effectively solved by the application of power through if not direct violence, through the threat of violence. Like, think about like 2020 and the aftermath of the Summer of Love and everything. Like, how much of what happened after all of that was predicated on, we just need to do whatever we have to do to keep them from burning our fucking cities down. Like, there was a lot of bad policy, a lot of bad decisions that were made in the months following the George Floyd riots and everything, where it was just do what's necessary to keep them from burning everything down. So you can say, oh yeah, the protests worked. The protests didn't do a fucking thing. It was the actual violence, the cities getting burned to the ground. That's what did it. Like, violence is the answer. And if it's not, you're asking the wrong question.
Some of my favorite videos, because I was watching a lot of streams online when that was going on. Even in just like Seattle, Washington, when they start to go across the bridge into the suburbs, there would just be people standing there at the end of their street with guns, and they're just like, they were just like, all right, fuck this, I'm out. And that's in like a real lefty city. And
again, that's the threat doesn't even have to be actual violence, just the threat of violence can often.
Those poor people got called racist crackers. It's like, yeah, but I'm standing here with the gun and you're leaving. You can call me whatever you want. You're not burning my house down.
That's right. Well, it's interesting talking about that. The application of violence. That kind of gets to one of the other things I said, we could talk about was villains who were actually kind of right. For instance, you talked about Superman. Lex Luthor is one of those that if you look at like Luthor's reasoning for most of what he did, most of what he does, at least when he's really well written as a character, it's
for the human race.
Right. There are these like superhuman creatures that we should have no ability to compete with, that are just here, and we're just supposed to trust that they're just gonna let us continue to have free lives. Like what's the worst thing? What's the worst thing that Luthor does whenever he finally does like become president of the United States? He like puts Superman and Batman on a terrorist watch list. Like what? That's like that's his big crime. Like it's
one of my favorite stories.
Right? It's like he's objectively a good leader, a good president. Like the things he does are for the protection of humanity, of the human race, to make things better. Look at Victor Von Doom in Marvel. In Doom's like conquest to rule the world, more often than not, it's not because he's just some power-hungry, egomaniacal psychopath. It's because, he looks at the rest of the world and he's like, okay, all of you are morons and you're all fucking this up. If I'm in control, I can fix all of this. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take over the world, and I'm going to run shit the way it needs to be run so that y'all stop fucking it all up. Like,
and his country of Latveria, they love the guy.
Right. He's well loved in his own country. And it's one of those things that, like, when you look at some of these villains, the bad guys, they have the right intentions in mind. They just might not have the have what would be considered a for Doom, he could easily be given comparisons to like Hitler, because Hitler saw that. Have you read Mein Kampf? Like, Hitler saw what was wrong with his own country, with what was going on with Europe, with the degradation of society, and was like, all right, I'm gonna fix this then. And then as he fixed it, he started like moving out to fix it more. The more you like look into it, like, France rolled over and didn't even put up a fight, except that the reason France rolled over and didn't put up a fight was because the people in charge in France were like, yeah, we got all the same problems you got, and like, you've obviously kind of figured it out. So just do that for us. Like, come fucking
also, not to mention, wasn't France like helping funnel weapons into Spain for the Spanish Civil War for like all the anarchists and commies to try to, weren't they like there was like a faction in France during that time too? So that's why some of the people in power were more sympathetic to Germany. I don't know. Maybe I'm just pulling out of my ass.
I think you're right. Well, but then like on Spain, Spain never really went to war with Germany. Why
is that? I thought he wanted to take over all of Europe and then the world.
Right? Yeah, but Spain never really, like, they never had a problem with Spain. It was kind of like Spain had their own civil war and kind of got all of that shit sorted out, and so they're like, okay, like, y'all already did it. You're sorted. We're good. Like, we don't need to like take this over. I do think it was really interesting when the couple months ago there was all the Churchill talk that was going around on Twitter and everything, and I was like, I don't know what to tell you about Churchill. What I do know is that when Patton arrived on the Russian front lines, he looked around and he said, I think we've been fighting the wrong enemy.
Yeah.
Like, Patton arrived, he saw communism firsthand and said, we've been fighting the wrong folks here. Like, we took the wrong side on this. We
already got them we got the tanks here. They're gassed up. Come on. Let's keep rolling.
Yeah, like Patton got a good look at communism up close and was like, oh shit, we backed the wrong horse in this one.
Yeah, it's a shame he died in a car wreck and not in the hospital. It was totally the wreck that killed him. It wasn't like bad care while he was there.
Anyway. What else we got? Who were some of the other characters that we had talked about that kind of... some of the guys in one of the group chats, I was like, who are some other characters? They talked about Dirty Harry. Apparently,
that's a good one.
Apparently, Roger Ebert called Dirty Harry a fascist and all kinds of other terrible things. And then from that point forward, Dirty Harry got like significantly nerfed in all of his movies following the original. Like, and that's one of those where like mainstream media pushes the envelope on how this character is supposed to be viewed.
Well, I mean, recent events to that movie that just came out, Joker 2.
Right. Another one where like I didn't like the original Joker movie as a Joker movie.
Yeah.
Like that's not Joker in my opinion. Being a massive comic nerd, but that version of Joker was fine in that it gives you a character who sees things that are very wrong with this world that he lives in. And he takes very extreme measures to answer that wrongness. And then they follow it up with a sequel and just destroy everything about the character. Like, it's from everything.
Have you seen it yet?
No, I thought about going to see it today, and instead I did not.
I can keep the spoilers out of it if you'd like.
It's not going to hurt my feelings any.
Okay. It just feels like Todd Phillips did everything he could to like just go back on what he did in the first one. Like, he accidentally made the first one like, something people can like, oh, okay, I can see that, And then it just seems like this one was just like, trying to think of what other movies have done that. Like, I can't think off the top of my head, but like he starts out like weak in the first one, then he kind of, as he loses his mind and like starts to like become the Joker, he gains more like confidence and power. And then the second movie is just like the opposite. In fact, like Lady Gaga, who plays Harley Quinn in this one, She's basically the one that's like manipulating and driving him instead of the old classic way of the Joker manipulates her to his benefit. Plus, there's a lot of like artsy fartsy stuff where it's like, did that happen? Did not really happen? You know, it just felt like, from what I heard, like they went in there without a script for a lot of the scenes, and they're like, hey, let's just do what we think would be like artistic or whatever, and then throw in a bunch of songs, and it's just a jumbled mess.
I definitely have heard and seen the jumbled mess critiques of it, but I mean that's another way of dulling down these characters when they're not received the way they're supposed to be, or the way that the creator wanted them to be received. Well, then you make a mess of it. If you can't just outright bring the character down to the level that they're supposed to, then you just make a mess of it where that it's unrecognizable from the thing that people jumped behind and got behind and really bought into. It goes back to Paul. Like, they're Dennis Villanueva and Herbert like wanted Paul to not be viewed as a heroic character, so they make him more angry, more dark. They have like the injected stuff with Shani that wasn't in the book, like to make him seem like this unsympathetic character. But the more they show that, the more it just sells him as like he is doing what he needs to do to go after this corrupt empire that will stop at nothing to exercise its will to be corrupt. So like the more you try to make him look like an unsympathetic character that you shouldn't like, the more likable they make him, and the more it makes him seem like an even greater heroic type of a character. Like now, even the people who should have been behind him are kind of turning on him, and he's still going to go fucking do it. He's still going to fix the problems that were there. Like they try so hard to impose their will on how you're supposed to view these characters because they don't understand the reality that we live in, that we're all sitting around looking at these fictional characters and we can put them in the real world that we live in now with these corrupt governments, with these do nothing law enforcement, with everything that's wrong with the world. They fit. And like has been said a few times, all of our answers are Fed posts. We see these, characters, and it's like, okay, like that's the solution.
So I don't know what random thought, like since we're talking about the first Joker, what do you think about Travis Bickle? Because I mean, obviously the first Joker borrowed heavily from the comedian and the Taxi Driver.
Oh, so that's another one that doesn't necessarily that gets viewed in a more favorable light than what the creator wanted. Taxi Driver, like, and that one, both the creator and like mainstream media, he that kind of got the Dirty Harry treatment to an extent. It was like people see this and they see that character and it resonates, but they don't want it to resonate. You're not supposed to like that. You're supposed to view that as like a bad thing. Like that's like, that's another good one. Gosh, I feel like we had several others that I'm forgetting.
I'm trying to think, man. I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, I remember mentioned Dirty Harry. Shit.
Oh, somebody had mentioned Gordon Gekko. Gordon Gekko's an interesting one with like, because what does he do that's necessarily bad? He
works within the system, the corrupt system.
Right. He works within the corrupt system to like make a shit ton of money. But you're supposed to view the billionaires as the bad guys. But speaking of, so like the show Billions, have you ever watched Billions?
No.
So in the last couple seasons, the guy who kind of shifts into being the main character, they try to like paint him as this Trump like egomaniacal, trying to run for president, like just throwing around his billions upon billions of dollars. Except that like I don't know how you can watch the last couple seasons and be like, yeah, he's definitely the bad guy, because all he does throughout the whole thing as he's trying to like build himself up for his run for president is he fixes shit. He goes in and uses his billions of dollars to fix the like the New York transit system and to get things running right. He tries to bring the Olympic Games to New York by fixing all of this stuff. Like, he's doing good stuff with his money, and he's even going to every extent he can to make sure that his money is not being that they're not making the money in dirty or unethical ways, and punishes people when they do. It wants you to view him as the bad guy, but how can you sit and watch this and be like, oh yeah, that guy with all his billions, it's like fixing everything that's wrong with the world. He's totally the
kind of sounds like the argument a lot of these lefties make against like Bruce Wayne. It's like, why does he just give all his money away instead of like punching up mentally disabled people? Like, he does a lot of like
the guy who's supposed to be the good guy in Billions is this corrupt DA that's like doing all kinds of shady shit to try to go after him, to try to paint him into these corners so that he can have this like gotcha moment. It's like, that's supposed to be the good guy. Like, are y'all like mentally handicapped? Like, are y'all the ones that Batman needs to be beating up? Like, the dude who's doing everything wrong and crooked to go after the guy that's literally just trying to help. Like, wow. Like, y'all, there's a reason that you side with the bugs in fucking Starship Troopers.
Did I haven't seen it, but have you seen that show Succession? I've heard a lot of people hate that because like, why do you like this rich family? Like, why do you guys, I don't know much about the show. I've heard those like critiques about it in passing.
People hate it because it shows real money and power and how those things work in the real world. Like, the kind of power that people at that level, like, top tier executives for large like news studios and stuff like that, like money that you and I combined over 10 lifetimes would never see. That kind of money and power, it shows more or less like what that looks like. And I think it's fucking awesome. Like, we need people like that. You need people that are, it's like the Mr. McMahon series. Like, the common theme throughout the whole thing is Vince is going to do what's best for business, period. If it pisses people off, if it pisses family off, if it alienates people, whatever the consequence of it, he's going to do what's best for the business. You don't become successful in business by pandering to and catering to every little bullshit thing. Like the dumb fucking quote that I read earlier about power or whatever. Like, yeah, if you're ruling through love instead of fear, you're going to end up compromising a lot of what got you to that point. You're going to end up compromising a lot of what will make you successful. If you're trying to be loved by everybody, then eventually you're going to be hated by everybody. Whereas if you're feared by everybody, everybody's at least going to do what they have to do. Like, they're not going to try to stab you in the back because they fear the repercussions of that. I try to tell my kids that I'm like, I'm not. Yours are still younger, and I hope you don't ever have to actually have this conversation. But I'm like, I am not here to be your friend. I am not here to be your cheerleader. I'm here to raise you to be successful adults. And sometimes that means I'm going to be the asshole.
Yep.
And I'm sorry that you put me in a position that I have to be the asshole from time to time, but that's my job.
Especially when it's been like clearly laid out and you didn't fulfill your end of the deal. So,
right. Like your mom, she can be the nice one all the time and she can cater to you and pander to you and give you everything you want, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. My job is to make sure that you are successful adults, that you are well-adjusted, ready for the world and everything that it's going to throw at you. And everything that it's going to throw at you is going to be ugly and brutal and harsh. And at the end of the day, that's me. I have always I've always sympathized with and understood the villains to an extent. I was definitely Team Thanos is right in Infinity War. Like, you know, the more you sit there and watch that and you listen to him talk about like why he's doing what he's doing, it's like,
I mean, it's a change from the comics.
He might be onto something here.
Because in the comics, he was just doing it for some poontang.
Yeah, you're right. Right. At least we gave him a purpose here. And you know, it's there, and there are a lot of the villain type characters that when you understand. And I am also I'm a big like horror movies and stuff like that. Like sometimes I just need my villain to be a villain for the sake of sometimes I just need you to be evil for the sake of being evil. Like you don't need to have a gray area. You don't need to have some reason. I don't need your like coming of age story of like how you got from this point to this point. I just need you to be objectively evil and terrible. Like, you know,
well, that's the problem with a lot of them. I'm sorry, finish your point.
Oh, it's like the Dark Knight Joker. Like the Dark Knight Joker is some men just want to watch the world burn. Like he doesn't have a necessarily an end game in mind or anything like that. He's just evil for the sake of being evil.
He's an agent of chaos.
Right, and that's perfect for some. But then you have other villain characters that they do have a good backstory and you can understand where they're coming from, and the things that they're doing are not necessarily
some of that comes back to like the way modern stuff is compared to like older things. You could have like a well-written villain that you could sympathize with, or you could have like your Joker types, but like now it's like the fucking morality of some of these like Hollywood writers. You can't have like you can't go the other way with it and be like a Boy Scout Superman, or, you know, and every villain has to be like, oh, we got to understand, especially if it's a female villain. I've had a lot of problems with those freaking Disney Plus shows. What was it? The Captain Falcon and Winter Soldier show with the Flag Smasher chick or what? Well, once again, they sex swap Flag Smasher, basically made her an Antifa leader. And like, she's like murdering people throughout the show. And at the end of it, we get like this big speech from Sam where it's like, you know, we got to feel bad for her. And Senator, you should do good. I'm like, she fucking murdered a bunch of people. Now we just got to like, you know, that's just one I could pull out of my butt right now. But there's been several of those these last couple of years that have bothered me. Like, come on. Maybe that's just a lot of the feminist crap.
I mean, yeah, it is. And like, I didn't hate it, but talking about like Disney, I didn't need a Maleficent backstory. Like, why couldn't Maleficent just be an evil
queen?
Lady? Yeah, this evil queen. Why did we have to have this like backstory to explain why she's actually this sympathetic character that wasn't necessarily all that evil?
They did it again with like the same feminist mindset with Cruella de Vil. Like, now we're trying to sympathize with a chick that murders dogs.
Right.
Like, what were you guys thinking?
Well, and like they did it to some extent. So I'm going to put Wicked, like the Wicked novels, outside of Baum's what Alice in what or Oz, because I don't view the Wicked stories to be the same universe, because it does tell it a lot different. But like with Oz the Great and Powerful, when they made that movie where it's with James Franco, where like it's Oz originally arriving in and you get kind of the origin story for the Wicked Witch of the West and how they were like friends, and then she becomes evil. It's like, why do we need to, like, because like, why couldn't we just have the Wicked Witch of the West be fucking evil? Like, why do we have
even my wife, who's like a normie when it comes to stuff, like she loves Wicked, but she hated that movie, Passion, Oz.
Well, and that's, like I said, and that's why I view them different. I view Wicked as a
retelling,
a different universe than Baum's Wizard of Oz.
So where does Michael Jackson's Wiz come into the canon? Have you ever seen that? The Wiz?
I am familiar with it, but no, I have not ever seen that.
It's all right. It's good old fashioned 80s schlock. I like it. It's not my favorite though.
There was a kind of a modernizing of Wizard of Oz that came out in the early 2000s on Sci-Fi, and it was really good. It was really well done.
Dude, Sci-Fi had like a run there that like I must have missed out on, because you told me about the Dune series and I've never seen it. And then like we started talking about it, and it's like, well, now I can't even find the damn DVDs.
Oh man, I got like stupid lucky. The secondhand store in Evansville that I'm go and just like peruse and wander around and look at stuff. They had so Sci-Fi did the Dune series that was based on Dune and Dune Messiah, and then they did a Children of Dune one as well. And I've got the Dune special edition DVD set, and then I found the Children of Dune one there the other day, so I snatched that up. Yeah, you almost have to find them at like secondhand stores or stuff. Like you can't find them on like Walmart or anywhere like that.
You got to find it at one of those estate auctions, where people don't know what they actually have.
Dad, Tin Man is what it was called. But it was really well done. It was different, but it still told a good story of Oz.
It's not the Buddy Epson story. He was supposed to be the original Tin Man, the guy that played Jed Clampett from the Beverly Hillbillies.
Really?
In I think the old school Wizard of Oz movies, the really, really old one, he was supposed to be the Tin Man, but he had an allergic reaction to the silver paint, so they had to recast him. It's my autistic fact of the night.
Nice. So yes, Tin Man. It's it's on Peacock and Freevee. So highly recommend checking that out. Good stuff. We got any other characters that we missed from our chatting before we?
None that come off the top of my head.
Yeah, I feel like we covered most of them, and I mean we covered the biggest points with it too. Is like these artistic types, and I guess this has always been kind of the case. The arts tend to lean more left. They tend to lean more utopian. They don't necessarily view the world through the lens of reality the way the rest of us do. So they create this thing that in their mind is supposed to be a negative interpretation, a negative thing that like we shouldn't view as a good thing in the world, because it goes against the natural order of things. It's being violent, and violence is never the answer. except
that you never spent time in nature.
Right. Nature answers almost everything with violence. Have you ever just watched the way goats have sex? Everything is violence. It's all violence. Ducks, holy shit. Ducks reproducing, that's 100% violence. I mean, yeah, nature is a very violent creature. It's like the PETA. They're like, oh, you shouldn't eat these animals. It's like, yeah, well, have you seen what the animals do on their own?
Yeah. Damn, nature, you scary.
Yeah, at least we're humane about it.
Oh God, Sauron. You talk about the new show that sucks when they're trying to like humanize the embody of darkness.
Yeah, are we?
I haven't watched enough of season 2 to have an opinion on it. I've just heard things. So
I haven't watched enough of the show period to have an opinion on it. I watched 3 episodes. I got about halfway through the 4th episode of the first season, and I just like noped out on it.
You don't want to see Galadriel make up with her son-in-law, Elrond?
I'm gonna pass on that.
Yeah, that was in season 2.
I don't have any like elf kinks or anything like that.
You're right, Ariel. That's some Silmarillion stuff. Yeah, but unfortunately, you have a bunch of hack writers with this Rings of Power show, and they only have the rights to the appendices. They don't have like the full rights to the Silmarillion or any of the Third Age work, so they're just making shit up as they go.
See, that's what I was like. I got 15 fucking books over there, right there. That's entire shelf is just Middle Earth history. Like you got 15 fucking books to work off of. What is all of this bullshit? So they don't actually have the rights to all of that amazing shit right there.
Now I will say though, like I haven't seen the whole episode recently, but apparently there's a Balrog in it, and I'm pretty sure they had to give money to not HBO, but Warner Brothers for that one because it looks identical to the Balrog from the Peter Jackson trilogy. And you want me to spoil it?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm not gonna watch it.
They've been building up to the Balrog since season 1. And then he's just in there for like a minute, and like during this like this dwarf like has to like sacrifice himself to take him out. And it's like, okay, that was anticlimactic. You guys built this up for how many episodes now? And is that all is in the budget? Because I know you guys have spent like, fuck, dude, probably close to $1 billion on this show.
What have they spent? Like 1.2 billion on this show over the 2 seasons?
Yeah.
Okay.
Still got the OG trilogy.
Lord of the Rings is something that we will devote its own. Mark Metz and I have been talking about doing a recap of the Silmarillion, and we just haven't gotten around to it. And at this point, I need to read it again, because when we had talked about doing it was probably getting close to a year ago, and so I read it thinking we were going to do it, and then we didn't do it, and I need to sit down and read it again.
I just had to get a new copy because I think I told you about my stuff I lost in the basement flood at my mom's house.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll reread it too.
Yeah, I think that's one of those that I read Starship Troopers in a day. Like when I reread Starship Troopers a couple months ago when I did that Substack piece, like I just sit down and read it. And Silmarillion is one of those that I can usually bang through that in a day. Of course, then I need to talk about it immediately because, like, when I read one of those in a day, then I lose it. If I read it slowly over the course of like a week and a half or 2 weeks, it all like sticks with me. But when I like speed read through it in a day, I got to sit down and do what I'm going to do on it immediately because within a week it's gone. Like it.
Well, a lot of that one is recounting like events and stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll and Ariel, if you would like, you can jump in on that conversation as well. But we'll I'll kick Mark in the ass and tell him, hey, we need to do the Silmarillion episode and discuss some of the history of Middle Earth, since I'm definitely not going to be watching Ring of Power season 2, since I never finished season 1.
0 out of 10. Don't recommend.
But V for Vendetta, Dune, Watchmen, highly recommend all of those. Punisher Warzone was the best Punisher.
Yeah, I like the one before that. That one was PG-13, so it didn't have the violence, but it basically had the perfect origin story as far as what we've seen in movies and TV. Even better origin, like the one from the Daredevil show, that they kind of like they had to change it to where, oh, Frank's doing this because of his daughter, not because how much he loved his son. So of course they had to do that because, you know, modern times, which, I mean, if I had a daughter, I would probably do the same thing. But I know that modern stuff, they do that on purpose.
Trying to think. Yeah. So definitely check out all that stuff. Those are, see what, for those who are watching, listening, like, leave me comments, send messages. Like, what are some other characters that we might have missed? Ones that are either the villains that were right or the heroes that maybe weren't supposed to be, but they're definitely heroic, whether the creators or mainstream society wants you to think they're heroic. The things they do are I'm gonna get you on a show one of these days.
Is that English you're learning, or no? I'm just kidding, buddy. I love you.
Probably. Yeah. So leave some comments. Let me know, like, what are some characters that we might have missed or left out, or ones that you think get a bad rap one way or the other, whether they're a hero that wasn't supposed to be or a villain that is actually a sympathetic character that should be viewed more heroically. And his English is too good. Ours is not. That's the problem. He's still trying to learn how to interpret whatever it is.
Oh, I speak 2 or 3 languages. Probably 4 if I remember correctly. Ooh.
So check all that stuff out. Let me know what's going on. Also, I appreciate feedback. I don't get a whole lot on the shows and stuff, but then I end up getting more feedback, like from random people in person, which is cool. But also, like, I don't know, like some shit, subscribe, leave a comment, let me fucking know what's going on before I, like, you know, feel like I'm just screaming into the void for no reason and end up quitting doing this because nobody ever leaves any fucking feedback. Leave some feedback. That'd be great. Still learning token. There we go. Now, see, you gotta specify. We're kind of dumb rednecks. Oh yeah, we're slow, and we drink heavily all the time. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. I will be back. Actually, Mark and I are supposed to be talking about Rome at some point too, so I've really got to put a boot in Mark's ass. We got a lot of shit to do. I've actually got a couple articles that I've been sitting on. So I'm going to be doing getting back to some of my old school stuff and reading articles. I've got a Mother Jones article that is just absolutely batshit fucking crazy about JD Vance. I'm really looking forward to that one.
That rag is still around?
Yeah, Mother Jones is fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like Mother Jones or Salon better. Like, and not because they put out good stuff, but because it's so fucking hilarious to read as like a sane human being. So anyway, I got a Mother Jones piece that I'm going to be talking about with JD Vance at some point, and then I've got another one. I can't remember what the other one was. It's equally like batshit crazy liberal bullshit that I really get excited about reading that stuff. The reason I had an Atlantic subscription for a year was not because I think the Atlantic is good news. It was because I could not wait to read the insane things that the Atlantic writers think and are willing to put down in print. It's wildly entertaining for me. So yeah, I'm gonna do some articles here over the next couple weeks. Jay, you got
your Mad Max, not Mad Max, Mad Magazine fixed somehow.
Yes.
No, man, I'm good.
All right. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm getting the Mad Magazine fix from people who are like actually believe the things that they're saying. They don't think that it's supposed to be funny. But I mean that makes it all the more funny for me. So.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Well, for Super.
Yeah. For anybody that plays Helldivers and is watching this live, give us about 5 minutes and we'll be jumping on. I am at Soupy21 on PlayStation, so hit me up. Let's smash some Terminators and kill some bugs. Here we go. Later, guys.